Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is Brooke Lively. She's the CEO and founder of CathCap. She works with law firms to help them understand their numbers and to grow their firm and to get off death's door if their revenue and their net doesn't really seem to be as much as they want it to be. We're going to talk about from panic to profit, how 6 key numbers can make a 6-figure difference in your law firm. That's the title of the discussion. So welcome, Brooke.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, if you would tell me a bit about your background first. We'll start with that.
Well, I think the biggest thing is I ended up doing this accidentally. I have a thing for attorneys. My father's an attorney. My brother's an attorney. 2 of my uncles, and virtually every guy I've ever dated, including the guys I dated in high school, grew up to become 6'2" left-handed lawyers that wear glasses. And somehow after grad school, after a stint at a hedge fund, I ended up working for my family's law firm. We hired a guru, kind of like you, to help with sales and marketing, who works exclusively with attorneys. And his clients came to me and said, "Can you do for us what you're doing for your family?" And that was when I truly understood how hard it is for attorneys, how little law school prepares them to run a business, and how they weren't running their firms based on the data and on the numbers.
Yeah, I hear from a lot of attorneys that they feel this is not working. They feel like this is going to help them, or they seem to run more on emotion. And I don't know if I guess they're more in the world of rhetoric and words and less in the world of numbers. Maybe they just have a natural disinclination to numbers. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there is anything wrong with their gut instinct. I think that in general, attorneys have great gut instincts. I think there are 2 problems. The first is that when you are running on gut instinct, you make every decision multiple times. You make the decision at 3 p.m, and then you go home and you're having dinner with your family and you're like, ooh, wait, was that the right thing? Should I change and go the other way? And you wake up at 2 a.m. and then you're in a deposition the next morning and you're going over that decision again. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Richard, but most of the attorneys I've worked with have.
You mean they tend to second guess themselves or overanalyze?
Yeah, you second guess yourself. You keep making that decision over and over. When you have data and you make a decision based on data, you don't do that. The second...
I guess it's like, if you're in the courtroom, you're representing a client, the stakes are very high and you got to get things right if you want to do it well and find little details that may turn a case. So maybe that's why all day at work, they're in that mode. And then when it comes to personal decisions, maybe they can't break out of that so easily.
Well, that's really the second problem. And we call it paralysis by analysis. Attorneys are taught not to ask a question to which they don't know the answer. In a deposition, when you've got somebody on the stand, never ask a witness a question if you don't already know the answer. So they don't, very often an attorney is going to say, well, maybe we need more information. Maybe we need to think about this. Maybe we need to dig a little deeper. And what ends up happening is paralysis by analysis. Nothing ever gets done. That decision never gets made. The action never gets taken. And when you have data, it satisfies that need to make sure you have looked at everything.
So are you saying that attorneys or do you help them to draw in their mind a corroboration between evidence and data? Is data the non-courtroom personal life equivalent of evidence?
Yeah, it is. Here's the evidence. Here's what we see. Here's what has happened. Here is what's going to happen. You have three options. The data says this. Our experience tells us that you have three options. Our opinion, just like you, Mr. Attorney, has an opinion of what course you should take based on your incredible education and experience, is that you should take this path. We're going to tell you the same thing. We think you should take option B. But ultimately, the attorney needs to take the option that they think is right for them.
Okay, so how do you give them a better decision-making matrix? What are some elements of it where they won't get tied up like this forever?
So what we do is we dig deep into the data. We go into their practice management systems. We go into their marketing systems and pull out information. But I think the thing that really people should pay attention to is there are, and I call them the 6 key numbers. They're actually kind of 6 key reports that all law firms should have. And they build on each other and they get more advanced the further you go. And the first one is all about cash, and you need a cash flow forecast. You need to know, depending upon the size of your firm, the smaller the firm, you need to know weekly. The larger the firm, it's monthly. But especially with a small firm, you need to know how much cash you are going to have at the end of every week for the next 6 to 8 weeks. To build that cash flow forecast, you're going to need to know your actual cash balance. You're going to need to know how much accounts receivable you have, and you're going to need to know what your monthly net is. How do you spend money?
Right.
Most
people, there's money in the account. They're like, oh, and there's no money in the account. They're like, oh, no, but they're not looking ahead with a cash flow calendar. They're just riding along by feel.
Right. There's money in the account. I can buy that, even though they wake up next week and rent's due or payroll's due. And unfortunately, they bought whatever the week before, and now they don't have that cash. Right. The second number you should look at is actually a series of numbers. We call them the ideal ratios. The ratio you need to pay the most attention to is owner compensation. What percentage of revenue are you taking home? Because at the end of the day, if you are not being compensated for the time, the effort, and the risk you are putting into owning your firm, then you should just go get a job somewhere.
What are some common margins, common ratios that'll be, to tell a firm that they're healthy or they're not?
Well, it depends on the size. If you are a small firm, if you're doing less than 200,000, the owner should be or about 250. The owner should be taking home 70%. They should be taking home 60% between 250 and 500. 50%, at that $500,000. Once you hit $1 million, and as you approach $1 million, you're going to go down to about a third.
Okay. Why is that? Because reserves need to be held and kept, or what's the reason?
No, it really becomes a matter of who's doing the work. When it's 70% and you're doing $250,000 or less, basically you're doing all the billable work. It's you and maybe a paralegal or a legal assistant. Okay. So you're billing it. When you are at a third, it's a much bigger operation. A $5 million firm has non-billable people to keep it going. There may be an HR manager that doesn't get billed out, an office manager, a COO. You as the owner may not be billing that much because you may be spending your time doing marketing. You might have a marketing manager. So there are people doing jobs that you did as that sole owner. When it's just you and that legal assistant, you wear every single hat, right?
Yeah, I went through that with my company. I did everything and then slowly got help to do more and more activities. You can't do them all.
Right. As you take off those hats, the percent of revenue that goes to you personally is lower. But let me tell you, I would much rather have a third of $2 million than 70% of 200,000.
Makes sense. Okay. What about in a per practice area situation? I know the margin gets less as you grow and you have more overheads, but do you have any ballpark figures for, auto accident personal injury versus family law or criminal defense?
Yeah. So we believe in running firms on the rule of thirds. 1/3 of revenue goes to the people doing the billable work. 1/3 goes to overhead expenses, which include marketing. And then 1/3 goes to the owner. That's our starting point. Do customize it some. When you look at different types of practices, an hourly billable firm really is going to be very close to that. When you look at a flat fee firm, you're going to see that the 1/3 going to people can go down a little bit. You can spend slightly less than 1/3, and that money is going to get reassigned to owner's compensation, to profit. When you start looking at something like personal injury, when you look at contingency, that profit can go even higher. And really what it comes down to is he who bears the risk gets the reward. There's very little risk in an hourly practice. I work an hour. At the end of the month, I bill you for that hour and you pay it. If you're good, you've got a great fee agreement. You already have their credit card on file and you are authorized to charge their credit card without asking them every month. So there's very little risk to get paid there. In a flat fee firm, you're taking on more risk because you've said, all right, I'm charging you $5,000 for this. It could take you 15 minutes or it could take you 150 hours.
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
Right. So it's like a contingency-esque type of, if you have a continuum, hourly is on one side, then flat fee, and then contingency on the right side.
Contingency, you may or may not get paid. So you're taking on all the risk in a contingency-based firm. So you should have the biggest margins in a contingency firm.
Okay, that makes sense. Interesting.
But we always start at that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Is that your floor that you never want to go below?
Well, is there a floor you never want to go below?
Well, you said it at some point, what's the, you might as well go work at McDonald's. You didn't say it, but I say it. Like, where's the point at where an attorney should just go work at McDonald's? Because they'll make more per hour.
It depends. Everybody wants something different. Profit is not always about dollars. There are different kinds of profit. Profit could be freedom. Profit could be the reputation you want to build. Profit could be the amount of time that you want to spend in the firm. So I had a client one time, and her deal was she wanted to be at her children's swimming lesson at 10 a.m. every Wednesday morning. That was profit for her. I had another client that wanted a national reputation. Okay, that's great. We had to build her a different type of practice so that she could do that. But having that national name was a type of profit, and she was willing to give up some of the money profit to get the reputation profit. So it really comes down to...
You can only go so far, no money and no business, So you got to have like some floor in order to operate.
Well, yes, you do. But it depends on how you look at it, because you could have a firm that has a negative profit margin and borrows money to operate for 6 months. However, they're doing that because they know they have a case that is really worth working. That's what a lot of contingency firms do, litigation contingency firms, not the pre-lit firms. So,
Okay.
PI that does, trucking accidents with TBIs and things like that, they can run negative for multiple months in a row, but then they have a big case that goes to court or gets settled right before they go to court, and it makes up for it. So they've been investing the previous 4-6 months to get that case to where it needs to be. So ultimately, when do you quit and go work at McDonald's? Only you can define that number.
Okay, sure. But I'm sure you're encouraging people to calculate it. If we turned you into an hourly person, here's where you would be at a per hour basis based on the hours you're working on the caseload you got. Or,
I actually don't.
Okay.
I don't. I encourage the firms we work with, I encourage the owner to look at their total compensation. I don't think you achieve anything by figuring out what you're making per hour.
Oh, is it just demoralizing or what?
it's just not productive. And even if, so let's say you're working 80 hours a week and you're making $7 an hour. I can make more at McDonald's because they're paying $17 an hour. Well, you can't work 80 hours a week at McDonald's. They won't let you.
Right.
So, you're comparing apples and oranges.
Okay.
What do you do with attorneys that are more money driven? I would guess perhaps, maybe young guys that are hyper aggressive, maybe are more to the money, or, what do you see amongst the attorneys that you work with? Are a lot of them looking for more balanced lifestyles? Are some of them just money driven? Like, what are the top motivators you've seen of the clients you worked with?
Most of the firms we work with are very growth oriented. So they want to grow. They want to be bigger. They want to be able to help more clients. And yeah, they certainly want more money, and we're going to help them get that. They also do not hesitate to look at the money, look at what they need at home, and say, okay, I can take home $100,000 less this year, and I'm going to take that money and put it in marketing so I can get more clients, so I can make more money next year. That's a great investment. They didn't need it at home. There are other people who say, I need every penny at home. We cannot make that investment this year. Okay.
So, all right. So you get numbers there. And again, what are the common motivators? Is it prestige? So you said a lot of them want to grow. Well, growth and helping more people, is that because it grows your prestige as a firm, more people know your name? Or is the goal there to make more money? Again, when you say grow the firm, growth mode, what does that mean? Growing their reputation, growing their money, growing the amount of busyness they're engaged in? Like, do they have a clear idea of what growth means?
Everybody wants to grow for a different reason. Attorney A, I have one attorney that I worked with that wanted to be the biggest PI attorney in the county to prove to his father that he wasn't dumb. His law degree is the guy's third master's degree. His father used to tell him he was dumb when he was growing up. That's why he wants to grow, to prove to his father that he's not dumb. I've had another firm that wanted to grow because they were in a very, very specialized niche, and they were really driven that they wanted to help people in that very specific thing. I've had some people grow because they want to make more money. I've had some people grow because they wanted to establish something with their name on it. For every person that exists on earth, there's a different reason why you want to grow. There's some people that want to grow just so they can say they made the Inc. 5000 list.
Yeah, but I would think from what I've seen, there's always the 80-20 rule in place. So there's probably going to be 3 to 5 reasons that are the predominant ones. They may look a little bit different, but they'll be similar category. But, I'm sure there's a lot of one-offs. Someone wants it for this particular reason or that. Do you see any skew in the data? There are common ones that tend to be the top few, or do you see it just more as a flat distribution?
More money and more challenge.
Okay. So what would be the criteria for you to work with a firm? What are some signs or things they would say that would say, I don't know if this is right for you, or maybe it's not the right time, versus like, oh yeah, you're exactly what the kind of person that we work with. You fit.
So we work with law firms that have hit some kind of ceiling and know they need help to break through. They want more out of their firm, and they don't know how to get it. The people who do really well with us are the people who execute. The people who, we're still talking about the same topic from November and they haven't taken action. Those aren't our people.
Why do you think, maybe no one knows why, in the depths of people's minds, but are you able to get people off the dime and moving if they're stalled and stuck? If they're too much of a perfectionist or they're too analytical? Like, what can you do if that happens?
So we can show them the way. We can show them the path and the way they can get what it is they've told us they want. We're always looking at that goal, what it is that they have told us they want to achieve. And we build from there. Every quarter, we look at the goal and we map out what's going to move us forward the most to get there. And that's what we work on that quarter. And, if you keep your eye on the prize, we're going to eat that elephant one bite at a time.
How is this different from, I've heard this, an attorney will say, I spoke to my CPA and they said I should only be spending 12% on marketing. Therefore, I don't want to do this, that, or the other. I want to cut it, or I want to, How is your approach different, just to be like totally frank, versus what I call a bean counter that doesn't really know about how law works? They just know numbers.
Well, first of all, your tax accountant's job is to minimize your tax liability and maximize your deductions. Their job is to run your business basically at a break-even level. Okay, great. You're not going to pay any taxes, but you're also not going to be able to get a loan for your company, and in some cases for yourself if you want to buy a house. Let's just start there. That their job is to minimize your tax liability. We are different because we talk about the trade-offs. Do I think you should be spending 10% on marketing? Yes. I think that for most firms over $1 million, 10% of revenue on marketing is appropriate if you don't want to grow. If you want to grow, we're going to have a totally different conversation. And we're going to start to talk about the ROI of that spend. And we're going to get more granular about it. Your tax accountant probably isn't going to do that. Because we specialize in law firms, we can also tell you things like, this is what the industry is doing. This is what we're seeing among our clients. We can look at certain numbers and say, yeah, I know your marketing team is telling you that's good, but from personal experience with our other clients, we can tell you it's not. It's little things. We just understand the ins and outs of the industry so well. We can look at it and let's say you're a personal injury firm that does trucking cases. We can look at your cases and tell you that it's sitting in this one particular stage too long. And here's some ways to move it through that stage faster.
Yeah, one thing I've seen a lot is, let's say you've got a criminal defense lawyer.
Yep.
They'll do some DUIs, an occasional felony murder, interstate drug case, whatever it is. They'll do a lot of misdemeanors. They don't know the margins on the different types of cases.
Yep.
They'll know, oh yeah, I like DUIs more than domestic violence. My heart's not in that. Or the clients are better behaved in misdemeanors than in felonies. So they tend to have more money than it's a felony. You can get into that and help attorneys shape what they're putting forth in their marketing so they get more of the types of cases that are beneficial to them emotionally, financially, et cetera.
Absolutely. So we always want to work the cases that have the highest profit margin. I am going to use a PI firm as an example. I was working with a PI firm here in North Texas, and they did car accidents and hospital slip and falls. And that was what they did. And I did some analysis and I realized that the profit margin was 30% higher on the hospital slip and falls than it was on the car accidents. So I'm like, guys, we're moving all of our marketing to hospital slip and falls. And they did. And they pushed their profit margin up by a third just by changing their marketing. And it was because we had looked at the cases. Sometimes there are what we call loss leader cases. They come in, they buy a starter service from you. And then from there, they buy a second service that has a much bigger profit margin. Okay, that's fine. But sometimes we see firms that are selling things that every time they do it, it's costing them money. And we're like, just stop doing it. And they're like, but it's 15% of our revenue. I'm like, but it's costing you 20%.
Okay.
So we're not going to do that anymore.
What if there's a type of case that's soul sucking? I don't know. Let's say, again, I'm personal injury. I do auto accidents, I do slip and falls, dog bites. I hate the slip and falls. I'll do them. Maybe I make more money on them, but I just don't like doing them. What about in that case? Even if they make me more margin, what if my heart's not in it?
We have two options. Either we move all of those cases to somebody else in your firm and let somebody else work the profitable cases, or we find a good partner, refer them out, and get the referral fee.
Okay, makes sense.
We don't do the soul-sucking cases.
Good. Oh, money is not bad, all be all. That's why I bring it up.
And that goes back to what I was saying about profit. Profit is not always about cash. In that situation, profit was not having your soul sucked out by the slip and falls.
Right. Okay. Another scenario I've seen commonly is, let's say husband and wife. Husband will do criminal defense, wife will do family law, or other firms, they'll do what I call immediate need law versus longer term. So they may do, again, criminal defense for the short base hits, the emergency stuff, and then they'll do personal injury, which can go a year or two, let's say, until a case settles. What do you do in those situations? Do you also evaluate? So there's short-term money and then there's long-term money. Do you encourage firms to have that mixture? Do they have those two different types of revenue, or do you just focus them in only on the particular type of cases they're looking at?
Every firm is individual, and I'm certainly not going to tell a family law attorney that they need to now do PI, or a PI attorney that they now need to do family law. Talk about soul sucking. That's soul sucking. Do we encourage most of our firms to go into one or the other if they're straddling it? Yes. Do I understand why a lot of PI firms have those short-term type of practices to get them off the ground? Absolutely. Personal injury, SSDI, those are firms that are hard to build because you have to invest so much on the front end until those cases start to pay out.
Right. Yeah, like the home run cases, and a DUI could be a base hit, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay. What if you have, let's say 3 attorneys in a firm, they all do one practice area, but you run the numbers and you see like, one of the people, they're just not good at converting and they're just bringing in, I don't know, 20, 25% less than the other 2 partners. What kind of conversations have to happen there?
This is so funny. We have had a ton of discussions about partners and value in our company. I don't think that origination is the only value that a partner can bring to a firm. There are partners who bring value by billing and managing client relationships. So those other 2 partners may be originating more, but the guy who's originating less, he may be managing the office, doing the marketing, dealing with clients, and teaching and training the younger attorneys. So no, he's not out originating as much. Now,
Right, but he's more of a mentor for the other ones and a coach and, maybe someone that everyone just likes. You met those people that like everyone seems to like them. Some people are more lopsided. Some people love them and hate them. So maybe, someone like that, amicable and just makes everyone feel good, has that value, but they're not, let's say, just only the breadwinner.
yeah, not everybody gives value to the firm in the same way. Now, if you have a partner who is not contributing to the management of the firm, is originating 25% less than the other 2 attorneys, and is billing 25% than the other 2 attorneys, okay, that's a discussion of, are they really a partner? Should they be a partner? What is the compensation structure for the partners? And is that person carrying their weight?
Okay. That makes sense. Any other scenarios you see that I haven't described that are common or that are really important to get your arms around and resolve? That could be a big problem in the future.
I think one of the biggest ones is attorney compensation. You really want to align attorney compensation with what you want that attorney to be doing. If you want them to bill, well, let me back up. Everybody should have some kind of KPI, some key performance indicator. They need one number that they have to deliver on that you manage every single week and you hold them accountable for every single week. It might be, in family law, it may be hours billed. In personal injury, it may be demands sent out. I don't care what it is, but there has to be one thing that moves your business forward. And please do not say dollars collected, because that's at the end of the chain of events that gets you money. And if we're going to make sure that we are collecting what we need to collect, we need to intervene. We need to know if we're off track much earlier in the cycle. Taking demands as an example, we know that when we send out a demand, on average, we're going to get a settlement offer back in 72 days. I'm making this up.
Yeah, on average. Right?
Yeah. So everyone should have a number. Their compensation plan should incentivize them around that number.
Okay. If I have marketing, I have a marketing company that works for me. They'll have their own KPI, let's say, or KPIs that I would want to watch too.
Yeah. Everybody has a number. Your receptionist has a number. So I'm also an EOS implementer. That was something when we're data-driven people here at CathCap. So we went through and we looked at our clients to see what made the difference between the people who were doing well and the people who were really excelling. And the people who were really excelling were those ones that were taking action, that were making decisions, that were executing. And we noticed that most of them were running on EOS. Which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. There's a book about it called Traction.
Okay.
And
does the EOS compel the person to do?
EOS is a framework for managing your firm that creates 3 things. It helps you get a vision that's shared by everybody in the firm. It helps you get traction, everybody rowing in the same direction, and it helps you create a healthy team. And when you have those things, vision, traction, and healthy, it is amazing what gets done in a firm. When people are executing like that, when everybody has a number, when they're executing on their number, it's huge. And yes, the receptionist has a number. I don't know what her number is.
What would be an example, like a number of calls taken or number of...
Percentage of calls answered before the 3rd ring.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So what practice area, like, again, who is a client you can help? Who is a client that's not in your area, in terms of size, practice area, geography, et cetera? Like, where do you prefer to draw clients from? What situations, circumstances?
So we work with firms that have revenue between 2 and 50 million. We have a national practice. We don't work with anybody overseas, but everything we do virtually, so we can help people anywhere in the U.S.
Okay. And how can attorneys that are interested, where can they go to a website, or what resources do you have for them so they can take the next step with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think our website is the best place. It's cathcap.com, CathCap.com. And if you look on there, you can always just make an appointment with me if you want to chat and learn more about what we do.
Okay. Well, excellent. Yeah. Brooke, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and talking about all these, these metrics and attitudes and, what's necessary to really grow. I think it's a really interesting call, and I'm glad you've been here.
Well, thanks for having me, Richard. I really appreciate it.
Excellent.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.